everyone, and welcome to the Truth in Data podcast, where each episode we conquer a different digital forensics topic. I'm Jessica, and I'm so excited to have one of the best guests we could ever have on the show today, podcaster in her own right, Heather Charpentier. Hi, Heather.
Hi, how are you?
Good. So, I normally say the episode title first, but I'm riding solo today. I don't have Debbie or Kim with me. But so happy to have you here. And
Happy to be here.
today's topic is we're really going to be talking about reporting. Now, please don't turn the podcast off. We have a goal here today to arm you with things to make your product better, right? Like at the end of the day, the actual exam we do in our head and the analysis we do and the scripts we write are not the product. The product is the report. That's what we turn over to the court, or we turn over to general counsel, or we turn over to the general, or whoever ultimately is the receiver of our product. There's you have been very vocal about your thoughts on reporting. But before we get into that, I'd love everyone to know a little bit more about you so they'd understand why we should care about what Heather has to say. And I feel like if they know me, they know you. Uh, but we'll get down to it. So, Heather, do you want to give a little bit of info about who you are, what kind of forensics you do, and etc.?
Sure. Heather Charpentier. I work for the New York State Police Computer Forensic Laboratory in Albany, New York. I've been there for a little over 11 years, and that's how long I've been doing digital forensics. Started on computer forensics, do mobile forensics, do some vehicle forensics, any kind of digital forensic cases that come into the New York State Police related to crimes in New York. So I've been doing that, for the 11 years. I also have a podcast with Alexis Brignoni called Digital Forensics Now. I'm the chairperson of the advanced mobile device forensics class for IASIS. I'm a contract trainer for Hexordia. Woohoo!
So if you take our mobile forensic analysis class or our data structures class or even our expert witness testimony class, you may have Heather.
Yeah, yep. Just did the mobile class recently, and it was excellent. Great group of examiners, great class to take. So, that's basically me.
And that's a lot, and you're obviously very involved in the community. I'd also say you're, just so people know what Digital Forensics Now is, it's a great podcast because it really goes over what's current events and trends, newly released tools, etc., that are coming out in the field. And one of the reasons I asked you to come on to do this topic is in that podcast, you regularly talk about how unimpressed, is that an appropriate word to use,
Yes.
that you are with a lot of the automated tool reporting features.
So unimpressed.
I was trying to think of the best term to describe that.
Yeah.
So I'd love to know, just to start, when you and your team and your lab, there's so many different things we could go about here, are doing reporting, but I think a really good place to start is a lot of people think that the PDF button or the UFDR button or the portable case button or pushing the case up to review or guardian, etc., that is the report. And I'd love to know your view on tool reports versus external reporting and what that means to you.
Sure. The tool report, I think, is necessary to have. It has to accompany your reports, no matter what. I believe that a lot of the tool reports, when looking at artifacts, the whole picture, the picture overall, is very disjointed. So creating just tool reports, in my opinion, leaves the person who you're creating the report for wondering, what am I looking at? Just taking a tool generated output and dumping it as the report, or dumping raw logs or whatever type of evidence you might have, and then submitting them with no interpretation. It's just a tool output. It's not your analysis. Anybody can do that. You can push the button and that report can be generated. And if there's no context, how is the person who's receiving that report supposed to know what happened? Or do they even have evidence sometimes? I've seen reports where I'm like, I don't have any idea what you're showing me related to this investigation.
So I love this because I think I want to take a moment and say what's the report versus what's the data.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes I ask for the data, and I'm given a UFDR from the other side, right?
That is
Like,
not the data.
that is not the data.
It's not the data.
The UFDR, which we appreciate that Celebrate creates the UFDR.
Absolutely.
We use it. It's awesome. And it's great for sharing data and communicating back and forth. And I'll say sharing data, but it's not the raw data. That's not the image. Sometimes I can extract a database from it. I actually did that on a case today where I extracted the database I needed from a UFDR. And that's fine. That can be a compact way of sending a specific database. But in no way should it be considered the raw data. The UFDR is, the R, I believe, in UFDR stands for report.
Yeah. True.
So that's a good thing to know, and I just think people should know the difference. At UFDR or portable case are basically like interactive reports because the user isn't necessarily digging around in the raw data, which is great because it's a great intermediary for somebody to mix up with the data. So if the tool report, you need to provide context. How do you teach folks in your lab to take the information that they garner out of the forensics tool and then report on that information? Because I think one of the most critical things is I'm not a one case. I'm one tool on a case person, right? I'm using
never.
Multiple tools, and they all have different, and not representations of the data, but different algorithms that they're running to parse different things. So I'd love to kind of know your perspective on how you ask people to put things together, how you train folks to be able to assemble and bring all that data together.
So the way that I see a report as like my final product is I have my tool report. I've put in all of the main artifacts that are important to my case, the timeline of what happened and how it came about and what happened after the incident and whatever I need to prove the entire case. So that's all in my results in my tool report, but also in my tool report, sometimes other supporting artifacts that don't necessarily need to be pointed out in my written report, in my opinion anyway. So my written report will take the tool report and create like a timeline of the very important artifacts that need to have context provided for them. So for an example, if I have a CSAM case and I find an image, what does the investigator want? The investigator just wants the image. That's all they want. All I need is the image. That's going to get me my charges. I'm all set. But I know if I have to go testify one image and explaining it on the stand, that's not going to fly. So in my written report, I may have the image in my tool report with all of the surrounding artifacts that I need for it. And then I'm going to explain, how did the image get there? What path is the image in? What application is the image from? Was it shared? Was it downloaded? There's so much evidence surrounding just one simple image. And without providing that context, I don't know how somebody could go and testify to that one image.
I mean, it's a great point because I was explaining this to someone earlier today. Existence of data on a system, just because it's stored there and it exists, does not mean that it was user created or that the user interacted with it, right?
Exactly.
There's lots of things. An example I gave last week, I was at SWGDE last week, and I said, if you were to start to search and you were to search ghost, and there was a pop-up for guns, but you were looking for ghost tours. In the data, there is going to be ghost gun in your searches.
Cached
Even
images.
yes, hashed images of ghost guns, of things about ghost guns. But if I was just looking up ghost tours because I was traveling and I wanted to go do something in the evening, that is very, very different than a ghost gun. But someone could turn around and go, well, this string, ghost gun,
Hmm.
exists in artifacts related to internet search.
Right.
And note the precise wording there, artifacts related to.
Yes.
Does that mean that the user searched for it? No. Does
Does
it mean
not.
that those cached images are because somebody looked up how to make a ghost gun? It does not.
No, it does
We
not.
need to provide that next step. That's my new ghost gun ghost tour thing.
Oh, I like it.
You
I
like that
like
one?
it. It's
Okay.
a great example. Another example, kind of like what you're talking about too, though. So I have extracted my own phone. I feel like extracting my own phone, I learned so much
For
because
sure.
I know what I did with the phone. So when I see things on my phone, I'm like, how the heck did that get there? So an example of that is actually the Facebook application. There are cached images in my Facebook path of people I've never seen. I know I've never looked at their picture. I know I've never clicked on their profile. I'm assuming maybe friends of friends of friends of
Yep.
friends when I'm scrolling around. But literally, I can't even follow that path back on some of those because I have no idea who the person is or which friend I might have scrolled past that had that friend. So, I mean, it would be really easy an investigation to see uh, Joe Smith's picture in there and say, she knows him.
I worked a case with a third party
Yeah.
app. It was a gaming app, and it had loaded into the contacts for this gaming app that was being
Hmm.
used to communicate all of these pictures and avatars and profile information to the contacts of all these people. And the initial was, are these contacts, the question, not the assumption, the question,
Hmm.
are these contacts of our user? They weren't. When I did testing, those were people who just happened to be online at the same time, who
Oh,
I
wow.
might have been paired with to play
Oh,
if
wow.
I had chosen random play instead of a known player. So,
Wow.
and they were just loaded into that same, for this particular app, into that same directory, right? So this is what can go wrong with a tool report, because the tool report would have shown those Facebook friends, would have shown these other players in this game, it would
Hmm.
have shown the cached images and the search for Ghost Gun, although none of those things were precipitated by actions of the user, intentionally by the user to be received by the
Right.
user. It's what the
Right.
system's doing in the background.
Just providing just the tool report with no context
Mm-hmm.
leaves that open to interpretation by an untrained person.
And
And it is really scary.
and this is exactly why we need examiners, right? I mean, I'm not going to get into my AI talk, but it's not even AI where we need human in the loop in order to be able to determine what these things mean. This also goes for when we are starting to do direct delivery of data to investigate with automated processes that make our jobs better, that are
Yeah.
integral, that are important to use. We're
Yep.
now talking a lot of direct data representation parsing, going direct to investigators,
Hmm.
attorneys, etc. And this is why the by the way, anyone listening, this is why you as a digital forensics examiner will still have a job, because
It
somebody
absolutely
needs to
is.
say what this. All right, so in this report, it sounds like the big thing that you're bringing is context. Have
Yes.
you seen? I know some of the tool vendors have tried to make it so that we can add some of those elements. So you can add a paragraph about something, so that you can add the context to it. Bring in the file path. File path is huge, right? Because you can have the
Yes.
same file that's located in 15 different locations.
Yes.
Um, how how have you had any positive experiences with that? Is that still a little bit new and immature, and it needs more maturity, or
I think each one of those tools that you're mentioning have its own positive aspects, but none of them fit exactly what I look for
okay?
reporting. I like to be very customized. I'm very deliberate in how I have things organized. I always say to new people when they're coming in, one of the things that I do when I start an analysis is I sit down in the chair, I read the narrative of the case, I look at what types of data I have on the phone, like the different applications, and I immediately start generating my report in my head. Unfortunately for the tool vendors, that report has to look like what I've generated in my head, or I can't handle it. It has to be the way I want it. So a lot of times I find myself kind of using HTML to link pieces of reports into a more organized timeline on my own.
Yeah, I really like your bringing up of HTML, because what I find is sometimes one tool will be really good at representing one type of data, and another tool will be really good at representing another type of data.
Yes.
I've been messing around with some of the timeline stuff in Ardex, and I like the way I can grab some of those artifacts and get that. And then I've been messing around a lot with Lumix and their visual playback of timeline of events and same time. So there's some really cool things that are happening, I'd say, in the courtroom presentation space.
Definitely.
But the courtroom presentation space, unfortunately, we still deal with paper. Luckily, they're not asking us to print all the evidence, but we still have to produce a paper report, which sometimes seems arcane when we're reporting on videos and audio. So we have to write all these narratives. So I'm going to ask you an important question. When we're talking about, we've pulled together all this data, and, one of the great reasons that I know I like to write my own reports is I'm using multiple tools, and sometimes like one tool gets me 2 layers deep. I was in a database from one vendor, and I brought it into a SQLite tool, and then then I dug in, and everybody knows this story, right? Dug in, had a binary plist in a blob, then in a data line, it had a base 64 encoded string, which was another. I did this one today, so it's like really fresh in my mind. That was an NSKey archived binary plist, and so then I had to bring that out, and that's when I actually got to my data point that I was looking for, and that actually just pointed me where to find the other part of the data, right? Like, so it was just telling me where to find the other part of the data that correlated, and that I had to go to that location, and that's very, very typical. But that means that I'm using lots of different tools, and I'm using lots of different pictures. So I love the fact that you're talking about using HTML to kind of link those things together and make a better report. How do you deal with that when, I've dealt with lots of attorneys who are like, I need it printed. I need it printed. I think we've all been there, right? Like, different people like things different ways. And also they want it printed for when they admit it as an exhibit sometimes. It just makes it easier to admit.
So when I'm creating like the customized HTMLs just to house pieces of my reports, if they're asking me to print something, it'll usually be like just one chat string or just a picture. Mm-hmm. So I'll go into that part, print it, and go into the picture and print it. It doesn't make for the best courtroom presentation that way. And I try and steer them to, can we just bring the HTML up on the screen in the courtroom, and I can drive. A couple of prosecutors have actually let me in the past get up to the podium and drive the computer. And they're asking me questions the whole time. And they're asking me, well, where are you clicking now? And what type of report are you clicking on now? So I try and get them to let me do that. It doesn't always work. Not every court will allow it.
No,
honestly.
No. Sometimes you can be interactive, sometimes you can't. You're saying you've had that experience and you're just in New York State. I'm always in different states, and it's like very, very varied what you can even bring in, what they'll let you do in the space.
Yeah.
Which is fair and good and fine, and each courtroom gets to rule their own roost, per se.
Yeah.
So in terms of that product, do you find in report writing, and I'm going to be really clear, in report writing, an appropriate place to use a closed model, not public, not AI, to maybe take the different content you have from different tools that you've already parsed out as relevant, written maybe short narratives for in your notes, and have it start helping assemble that content for you? Or would you say absolutely not?
I don't. Now
at this time.
Now, when I've been like creating my HTML report and I'm just like linking in tool reports just to this like face page, I'll ask AI, hey, in HTML, how do I create a header with my logo? Like little questions
That's
like
no
that.
different than Googling, though.
Yeah, but when it comes to actually having it assist me with creating the report, I do not. I don't even, I know, and I'm not getting into any kind of policies at work, but I know there's policies, and I also know that I'm gonna wait and see when that becomes available. There will actually be a policy at wherever I'm working that will tell me whether I can do that or not. And I just at this time I'm not using it.
Precedent's very scary. 100%.
Yeah. But for little things, like if something's not working that I'm trying to do and it involves zero case data whatsoever,
Right.
I'll ask it a question, because honestly, sometimes it's quicker than Google. However, sometimes it leads me down a wrong path for an hour and a half until I finally find the right answer. So be careful with that.
All right. So in our reports, that we tend to have to report on two things. We have to report on facts, and occasionally we have to report on our opinion, right? How do you include opinion in reporting?
I do not. So I do not. Never in the reporting. So I don't know if I've told you this before, but in New York, I mean, I've testified now for 11 years. I've been sworn in as an expert, I believe, only one time. And that's for anybody listening that doesn't know, that's when you can supply your opinion in the courtroom. So when I'm doing my report in the lab for court, I'm assuming I'm a fact witness the entire time. So my report is all fact. When I get to court, if they're telling me in my my pretrial meeting that, hey, we're going to swear you in as an expert, which again has only happened one time, then I'll start formulating, okay, I have all of these facts. What was my opinion? What is my opinion on them? But I haven't had a lot of opportunity to be able to do that.
Yeah, it really does depend on your jurisdiction. And I think I've worked in environments where it was expected that you would, if you were giving an opinion. The big thing is in your report, if at any time you're giving an opinion, that it needed to be, and I'm not going to say where this lab was, it was in the government, but it always had to be annotated clearly. So it would be a demarcation, like brackets, examiner comment, or analyst comment, whatever that particular organization chose to call us, colon, and then it would be that that opinion statement, which would be like, this is consistent with blah 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 blah, end of parenthetical. But it would be, I would say, used sparingly at the most. And so there may be an appropriate way for you to do that in your jurisdiction. And I actually asked you that question on purpose because I knew you had told me that. And I wanted to bring up that it's not something that is even done in some jurisdictions. So that's really going to be your agency and your organization matters. But I think regardless, if you can include it, it needs to be set off and blatant that you have left fact land and you are now opining. Fact land.
Yeah. I was speaking with some examiners when I was down at IASIS last week, actually, other members of law enforcement, and they were saying same thing as me, that they're most of the time just fact witnesses, unless it arises to a level where they have to give expert witness testimony based on the questioning usually.
Right.
But they're usually also not sworn in as experts. So
I love the we teach an expert witness testimony class, and one of my favorite things about that class is reminding people that you're not an expert until you've been asked to give an opinion, right? So like you become the expert the moment you give that opinion and that it's allowed. Right, like that's for sure. That's the actual moment.
That's for sure. I do tell all of our new people though, the second they walk in, you are now an expert, and you be prepared to be an expert.
Well, you have to be prepared. Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly. You have to assume that you are going to be read in. But I do also tell people the first time they're going on that chances are you're just speaking, like you shouldn't freak out. You're just speaking to what you're doing.
Yes.
What you did, right? Like
absolutely.
The facts of what you did. All right. So. I'm going to get into a little bit more of a hot topic, which is how our reports are sometimes consumed and used. And that is not necessarily just for the case at hand, but because it is our product, it is sometimes how labs measure the worth of an examiner. And I know that through your teaching and your other roles and the podcasts that you interact with, just as I do, thousands of examiners a year. What are you hearing, seeing in regards to how our reports are being used to assess the quantity slash quality of the work of the individual examiner and of the unit as a whole, in terms of things like budget and manpower and raises and promotions, etc.? How are reports being used as a metric that we're being judged upon?
So I've talked to a lot of people about this. I think mostly in the law enforcement environment. But the more reports you complete, the better you look, no matter what's in those reports. And that's maybe not to your like first line supervisor, because they see what's in your reports. They're looking at your work. But all the way up the chains, and this is many, many law enforcement agencies that I've talked to recently, it's just how quickly you can get reports done and how many you have done at the end of the year, not the quality or content, which is sad.
Right. So there's no difference between a case with 78 mobile devices and a SIM card. There's no difference between if it's a tool report or if you did deep analysis, worked on an unsupported artifact. You know, and the problem is the more in depth you go and the bigger and more complex the cases are, the lower number of reports you're going to have.
Yeah, the longer it takes.
And unfortunately, right, like the law of the rules is people will do work based on whatever metrics they're given. So, you know, I've worked in labs where it was items processed. I've worked in labs where they judged us on gigs processed or terabytes analyzed. Yeah,
I've heard of that as well. Yep.
I mean, these are all I've worked in labs where we were based on our reporting, and we were given a different rating for a GIST, so like an automated tool report, than an analytical report, like a report where we found findings. Personally, I'd love to see findings be the important thing, right? Like, what have you uncovered be the qualitative metric? Because if it's just what came out of the tool, you didn't uncover anything. Like,
right.
Qualitative findings being what we're measured on, because then we'd be being measured on going beyond, and not going beyond for no reason. That's why it has to be a finding, right? Not just a finding that's relevant. You wrote something really amazing on LinkedIn the other day. Do you mind if I read it?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Okay. It's long, so
it is a little long,
but it is, I think, valuable. So I'm gonna pull up my phone just to read this.
Sure.
Quote, "To every examiner sitting in that dark room, working through evidence no one should ever have to see. You didn't take this job for the metrics. You didn't clock in on your first day thinking about case counts, quarterly numbers, or what a supervisor spreadsheet would look like at the end of the fiscal year. You took this job because a person's or child's justice matters more than your comfort. Because somewhere, a victim exists who deserves someone willing to do this work right. Not fast, not easy, right. When the pressure comes from above, and it will come, remember what gets lost when quality is traded for speed. A missed artifact, an incomplete analysis, evidence that never makes it to the prosecutor's desk. A person or child who doesn't get justice because someone was in a hurry to close a case. Being thorough is an act of advocacy. Being patient is a form of protection. The integrity you bring to every examination is, for that child, the difference between being believed and being forgotten. Do not lose that, not for a boss, not for a deadline, not for any metric that has never once sat where you sit and seen what you've seen. Remember your why, protect your standards." First off, Heather, that was absolutely beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
Eloquent, well stated, emotional. And it really provides clarity as to why sometimes we have to take the lower metric. We have to maybe not look as good as the person next to us in order to ensure the quality, and so that we are supporting that person, be them a victim, be them somebody who's wrongly accused, um, be it somebody who just needs to know how that thing got there,
Yeah.
um, so that they can close the hole,
Right.
regardless of why we're doing it. You're right. Nobody gets into this job to
Yeah.
go, I completed 45 reports this month.
Yeah. I just don't get it for the people that do that. Like, I just don't get it. Why did you get into this job?
So, but nobody, I think, does. So,
Sure. Yeah.
what do you think is the metric? How do we measure our work? How can our bosses, and many of whom have worked as examiners, but many of whom haven't? I've worked in labs where my boss wasn't a forensic examiner previously, and I've
Right.
worked in labs where my boss never was a forensic examiner, or maybe they were in a different discipline of forensics, where something could be more quantitative and less qualitative, a science that's very discrete.
Yeah.
Um, what is what what do you think we should be saying to those folks that, hey, please don't judge the number of reports I've written, please judge the what? And then how do they advocate it to their bosses when they're trying to get you another forensics machine or another forensics
Right.
tool?
So it has to be the quality of the work. It has to be. And if that court case went to court, what was the outcome? If it got a plea deal, was the plea deal based on the amazing work that you did? Um, how to put that on paper and ship that up to the higher ups, though, I don't know. I mean, we see it, right, in our offices, in our labs, or wherever you might work. You see the work that people do. You know who's putting out that really good work, but maybe only completed 2 cases this month. And then you see the people that are putting out work, but completed like 15 cases this month. So I don't know how you put that down on paper to push that up the stairs, but I do know that the quality of the work is what should be measured the most.
So I'm going to tell you what makes me sad.
Yeah.
We just had a little bit of a busy jaunt of conferences and events. I was at Magnet User Summit and NCCC, and I know you were
Mm-hmm.
at IASIS, and
Yeah.
folks were at C2C, and I have people coming up to me, and people who have taken my classes too, and I'm sure classes you teach as well, and they say, "This is great. I love this. This is what I want to do.
Yep.
But
Mm-hmm.
my bosses don't let me.
Yep.
We used to be able to do this, but now we have to meet 125 cases a week. We have to hit this number. We have to have a zero backlog. We have to, I can see you. This is the thing that
Yes.
hurts my heart because I didn't used to hear this. What I used to do is, I would teach somebody how to parse unsupported apps. I'm
Yep.
talking like a decade ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd teach a class or I'd give a webinar and people go, this is great. I'm going to do this week. I have this case I know it could work on. And now I instead get an examiner comes up to me and goes, this is great. I want to do this on this case, but they won't let me. They won't let me. They won't let me find truth. They won't let me get justice. All my shop does now is pump and dump.
When I tell you no less than 10 people said that to me while I was at IASIS, I am not lying.
So having the same experience.
I think it was more people than that. I'm lowballing it at no less than 10 people. And it comes in the form of exactly what you just said. My agency won't let me, or I don't have time, or when would I use this, or I don't know how to use this. I don't have time to use this. Like, I mean, there's different variations of exactly what you just said, but all of it boils down to they're not able to do it for some reason.
So when would I use this I can deal with? When would I use this? I can explain to the examiner the instances? Are you
Yeah.
testifying? Are you not seeing something you expect to see?
Right.
Did you check and see if all of the artifacts that look like they would be important are parts? Like, there are certain steps you can take, and I know
Yeah.
you teach the same class I teach. We have that whole like third party app
Oh yeah.
module, and we go through all the steps to like determine, and we have a whole section on when do you do this,
Right.
because you can't do it on everything. And I'm not saying that
You can't.
if I was to examine every bite of every case I ever worked,
No
I'd
way.
still be on the first case.
So would I.
But there is a time when it needs to be done. And so
Yes.
those ones, I feel like that's a separate bucket. I feel like that's somebody who's learning, or somebody who's always been in a lab where they were
Yeah.
forced to pump and dump, and they're asking, how would I even get to do this? I
Yep.
can't even foresee myself being able to do this. The ones that kill me are the people who realize it's important, know when they should be doing it, and their labs aren't letting them because of the almighty metric.
There's a lot. There's a lot of labs out there. There's a lot of agencies out there that have that policy. They need it now. Just hit the button and give it to them and move on.
As far as I'm concerned, that's not forensics, that's technicians.
Absolutely. The only thing that's going to stop that is when the other side starts moving in and opposing some of these cases, or more of these cases. They are starting. The only thing that's going to slow it down or stop it, though, is if they get in there more. I know they are in a lot of cases. I'll tell you, though, I've been working in the field for 11 years. I've had 2 cases that had a defense expert. One of them agreed with my findings, and the other one wanted to argue that I didn't get the best extraction because I didn't get a physical on an iPhone. So, I mean,
what was it, after 2012?
It definitely, there was no physical for that. but yeah, so like, I mean, those weren't hard to combat, but I think as defense starts really getting into, and when I say defense, I'm specifically thinking of law enforcement because that's me. But when the opposing side really, really digs in and has the same expertise or more expertise than your side, we're going to start to see it. We're going to start to see it more and more.
So I'm in a different position because of the way in which I work and function, right? I function as a digital forensics examiner who is hired independently. My company is hired independently to come in and work cases. So I only work the cases where that it is being challenged, right?
Right.
Most of the cases I work, I'm coming in because there's a Daubert hearing.
Right.
So almost exclusively, there's an opposing examiner in the cases I'm working. So I think I'm having a different perspective because I am literally seeing the challenges every day in, day out, because that's the work I do, right? So I see the challenges, and then I'm trying to incorporate that when I'm teaching, because it's almost like I'm not getting those rote things that are getting a plea.
Right.
I'm only being brought in when it's going this next extra step. And to be honest, probably the reason I'm getting brought in is because there's not necessarily that expertise in every lab anymore where there should be. And the reason is because of this. I mean, let's be honest, this is not the lab manager's fault. This is not the district's fault, right? When I started in this field, there was not digital evidence in every case. When I started in this field, there weren't 15 items of digital evidence in every case. There wasn't a car and 3 phones and, you know, and an iPad and a Mac and a PC. Like, there's so much, and a drone. And there's so much digital evidence now that I understand it. So there is a need for the technology. But I mean, and I know we're getting into a million other topics, but I think the big thing is that we should be judged on the quality of the report, not the quantity of the report.
I agree. I can't agree with that more. I already said it once, but I'm going to say it again. The examiner in the office that completes 2 reports and they are fantastic and they lead to a positive outcome for a victim are so much more important than somebody just dumping 15, 20 phones a month. And I really, really, really do feel for the examiners that are dumping 15, 20 phones a month that really want to be that examiner that does the extra work.
And I mean, this is really it. Does your lab want, and not all cases need a deep dive.
Nope.
But there should be a measurement of a qualitative report. Like I said, I did work in a lab where we considered those two different things, a
Yeah.
qualitative report versus a pump and dump, as
Yeah.
I've heard them referred to many a time,
Right. Right.
more where we're just getting out a report.
Yeah.
Well, I think this has been so insightful. Thank you for being
Thank
such an
you.
advocate for things. So, is there anything you want to share where people can check you out? Any good resources for reporting? I mean, that people could reference?
Yeah, I mean, so for reporting, you obviously, and everybody who's listening has their own way of reporting, whether you're using a tool report, whether you're creating your own reports. I would say, as just a piece of advice to everybody, is try and do that whole thing where you sit down and envision what your report looks like when you want to go sit on the stand and testify. The way you see it should be the way you present it, and it'll be the way that you are able to present it best in court if you have it laid out like that. No one tool I know of yet actually gets that all into a beautiful report. So here's a challenge to anybody and everybody. Let's create that reporting tool together as a community, or ideas. And I mean, we can just make Alexis put it into a leap, right?
Well, we can't use R for report leap because that's return leap, but we'll have to
we'll make him come up with something. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely what I have to say. And I mean, also, if you want to do those reports and your agency is pushing back against you and you really want to do, like, I'm going to call it actual forensics and not just push button forensics, push back. Keep working to be able to do that. I mean, eventually they should see the value that comes with those final outcomes that you're able to get in a courtroom from a well-structured, well-detailed report.
The tool report said the search was at 2:47 a.m. It wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good example. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
If you don't. But it's a good example of why you can't just rely on a tool report.
I just really hope that doesn't have to happen to each agency before they realize what they need to do in cases like that.
Right.
I really hope
that's actually a really good point, right? Do you want your agency to have to fall on a sword,
right?
In order to learn the lesson that that deeper exams need to be done. And by the way, the agency didn't fall on a sword. I want to be clear on that. The agency did not in that instance. If anyone's listening to this and misinterpreting that.
But if they're going to fall on that sword, right? If an agency is going to get hung up with something like that, an incorrect timestamp in a
but they don't
court,
know. That's the problem. They wouldn't know. They wouldn't know. That's the whole problem.
Who's that coming back on? Not necessarily the agency. You're the examiner.
You're the examiner. Mm-hmm. But if you're not digging deeper, you wouldn't know that you're the person who got caught off guard by something that's parsed without knowing meaning. You won't know that they never searched for a ghost gun, that they only searched for ghost stories or ghost tours.
That's true.
Well, that's enough ghosts in this evening. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And
Thank you.
We'll catch you next time. Oh, and check out DFN Digital Forensics Now, featuring Heather and Alexis. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
All right. Bye.